Happy Tuesday. It is Tuesday, October the 8th, the 283rd day of the year. There are 83 days left in the year 2024. And wherever you are, I hope you are in a safe spot because of this hurricane that's coming up through the state of Florida. It's going to be pretty tough for a lot of reasons. So just make sure you're in a safe space and try to stay out of its path. Welcome to another edition of Tuesdays with Tom. I've been fond of libraries since I was 9 years old. At 9 years old, my mom took me to the Titusville Library on Center Street and 6th Avenue in the Titusville neighborhood of my hometown of Birmingham, Alabama. My mom was a big reader, and like her, I learned to love to read. Being in the library was like traveling to another location, another city, another country. Having my own library card was like growing up. I was excited. That first visit, I checked out the maximum number of books and excitedly read all of them before the due date and then returned for more. I've been a big fan of libraries ever since. At both my high school and my elementary school, we had libraries. I frequented both of them. The libraries where I fell in love with the Rover Boys, a series of books for and about young boys that I end up patterning my life after. In college, I often visited the campus library to get away from my job as a football player. Today, we get to learn more about libraries. Our G-List guest today is Sadie Lea, a children's librarian who has taken over the youth services department of a local library. We look forward to hearing about the great things she's doing and the things she's planning for small children, which is an interesting thing for me. So we look forward to that discussion. Our show today is, of course, sponsored by the Best Girl Consulting Firm. So let's hear from Best Girl.
Best Girl is a consulting firm that provides customized leadership, access and inclusion, public relations, communications, and organizational consulting services. Clients include Fortune 500 companies, utilities, higher education institutions, small businesses, and associations. Best Girl's team of consultants, led by Joyce Gilly-Gossam, Emily Hedrick, and Sean Jones, partners with business and education clients to promote organizational effectiveness, communication, motivation, and leadership, with always an impact on the bottom line. Best Girl's customized consulting services include strategic planning, corporate communication, executive coaching, fundraising, and economic development.
Best Girl customizes the solution that fits your needs. So let's go to our round table and talk to Barbara Wallace Edwards and Michael Walker. Good morning, Barbara Wallace Edwards. How are you this morning?
Good morning, Tom. I'm doing well. Thank you. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. I'm just feeling some anxiety for the people who are in the path of this storm. That's
most definitely, Tom. My prayers are certainly with those individuals in the path of the storm. It's devastating. You know, this is the first time ever, maybe, I don't know, definitely in a long time, that we've had two hurricanes and storms, just major, coming back to back, you know, weeks after each other, just a week after each other. We had that storm last week. Hurricane Helene had come through, devastated North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee area. And it is a category 4. Now this one, Hurricane Milton, is a category 5. So it's even going to be more severe. So anyone that's in the path, I pray that they were able to get out and get to safety. There was an alum who I saw on social media, an Auburn alum, who people were asking them if they had gotten away to safety, and they said they're going to sit it out. They're going to stay at home. And I'm thinking, wow, I don't know. I mean, I grew up in Mobile, you know, so we dealt some hurricanes too, but and I vividly remember, I think I was probably maybe 10 or 12 years old when I actually sat through one, and probably one of the most severe, Hurricane Camille, I think is the one that was devastating.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It was a frightening experience for me as a child, and I can't imagine a family staying there, knowing that they're directly in the path of it, and they know how severe it's going to be. And I don't know. I don't understand.
I think some people try to ride it out, but I think that number's becoming less and less because
True.
people are understanding that the severity of these things. And I remember when Hurricane Ivan came 2004.
Right.
I was in Atlanta working on a project, and my next door neighbors, they wrote it out.
Right.
And, his the wife said he can do whatever he wants to do from now on. I ain't never staying again.
Leaving. Absolutely. Yes. My parents, after Camille, whenever they said it was going to be anything above a category 2, they would leave. And so I think that's the best thing to do. I mean, it's the safest thing to do. You don't ever know. It could turn and move in a different direction and maybe lessen the strength sometimes, but that's rare. Especially
people say they don't want to leave, and I understand because
right.
most of the time you can't get back right away.
Right.
You gotta wait.
That's true.
And there are some people who then take advantage of that and do criminal acts.
Right. That's true.
And so you're kind of in a dilemma there as to what to do. But I can tell you for Hurricane Ivan, when I got to call home,
mm-hmm.
and my wife didn't stay home. She luckily went inward.
Good.
Inland rather, and stayed with some friends.
Right.
But and if it's at night,
mm-hmm.
and all you can hear are the limbs cracking,
yes,
and stuff, it's incredibly scary.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then when I tried to get home, and I bet you what's a normal 4-hour ride took me about 8. Because you'd go so far and then roads would be blocked and you'd have to go another way. And,
right.
I did find a place that was open about 50 miles from here that had ice. And so I bought all the ice I could. and gave it to people in the neighborhood.
Right. Because they didn't have anything. And no. You don't know how long the power is going to be out. You know. Right. And people that live on the water, especially, and people that live in mobile homes, those areas, are possibly going to get hit the hardest.
I remember when they announced about the power was off 8 days.
Right.
So I remember they announced sometime after that the neighborhood Waffle House was going to open, and everybody was excited because nobody had had a hot meal. It's like we're going to the Waffle House.
Right. I'm sure they were packed.
Yeah. And it's not funny, but
it's not.
Try to make the best of everything.
Right.
That was, we didn't have any damage to our home, but we had damage to the water. When you see how that water rises up,
wow,
and I describe it as being vicious.
And it is.
You have to get out of there. Hurricane Sally was just a 2, but it stayed out there on that. It just rained.
Right.
Like 3-4 days, just rained constantly, and that water rose up, took my boat off the lift and rammed it up against the rocks and destroyed it. And all you could do was sit there and watch it.
Right.
You wasn't going out. I wasn't going out there.
It wasn't going to do you any good to go out there, Tom. That's right.
When one guy tried to go move his boat, he got killed.
Oh, wow.
Boat wasn't worth it to me. I watched my boat get destroyed, but it was like, okay, I'm not going out there.
Yeah, you can replace the boat, but you can't replace your life. Yeah.
So I hope everybody comes off okay.
I do.
And it's unfortunate. Everything today, everything seems to be so divisive. Mm-hmm. But I was reading this, there are conspiracy theories. The government is doing this, and they're causing these storms. and so on and so forth.
And the crazy thing is, a lot of people believe that.
Yeah.
That is so sad. And as our guest today was saying, people need to get into the library and do some fact checking, or on their own computers and do some fact checking. That is not true.
Yeah.
But because certain people say it, certain people believe that. So the cult following needs to go do some research on their own.
Yeah. Let's get Michael on and we'll come back to it.
Okay.
Good morning, Michael Walker. How are you?
Good morning, TG. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great, man.
Good.
So you're out of the path of all the storms. So you guys are okay over there in Atlanta.
Well, it's projected to be. Good morning, Barbara, to you, by the way.
Good morning.
Yes, it's projected that we will not get any of this when we suffered, the state of Georgia, that is, suffered quite a bit under the previous hurricane.
You're recovering, huh?
Yeah. Even in the city of Atlanta, people were evacuating their homes and walking the waist-deep water and stuff. So there was a lot of damage here in Atlanta and South Georgia from last week.
Wow.
So
yeah, I know the power was out in Savannah, and
right.
you know, our son was down there and he was upset because the power was out. I said, "Shit, be glad that that's all.
That's all.
That's the worst of it."
Right.
that's all he had to worry about. He's lucky, you know.
Yeah, I saw pictures of some of the areas in North Carolina that blew me away. I mean, they showed before and after videos actually of a certain area, an actual street, and to see the devastation that it caused. I mean, the street was washed away. It was on a river or something, and the backside of houses and businesses were just totally destroyed. The front of the buildings looked okay, but the backsides were destroyed. The streets were destroyed. There were cars that was rammed into trees, and it was unbelievable to see that.
Well, you know what's interesting is, and it's a shame that a natural catastrophe, which is what is about to happen, cannot escape politics.
Yeah.
Right.
Their governor there in Florida, DeSantis, he refused to answer Vice President Kamala Harris' phone call to see if he needed aid. He said it seemed like it was political to him, you know. And the first thought I had was, well, how do you know it's political if you didn't answer the phone to talk to him?
Right.
Number one. And
right.
Number two, if it were political, so what? People are losing their lives, and she's calling and saying, "Hey, do you need some help? Let us help you." And you don't want to return the phone call because we're in election season, and you're saying it seems political. I don't think those people out there that need the help care whether or not it's political or not. They need the help.
Right.
And you know,
and they have all these conspiracy theories out there saying, you know, that the government hasn't provided any help to the people in North Carolina. They're only offering them $750. Well, the government's like, that's an emergency response. That's to get them some immediate help. That doesn't mean that's all they're going to get. Exactly. And again, why do you want to keep sending them money if none of the businesses are able to open? So what do they need tons of money for right now? You know, they can't start repairing their homes and replace their cars right away. It's going to take some time.
What I found when we had Hurricane Ivan was you can't get anybody to do any work.
Right.
Until first of all, it's cleared up.
Cleared up, right.
Secondly, unless you have some cash in your pocket,
right,
all your debit cards, none of that stuff gonna work because the power's out all the way down.
Right.
So you've got to have, you know, I got a guy to come and redo my dock and all that stuff, but he didn't. I don't know when Hurricane Ivan, what month it was, but it was May or June before I could get somebody here to start doing the work.
Couple months at least, right?
All the construction guys, all the guys who do that kind of work, they got as much work as they can handle.
Right.
And they want to take the jobs that pay the most.
Right.
So I learned from that you always ought to have a little cash on hand.
Absolutely.
When one of these storms are coming, because it's the only way you can get some stuff done.
Well, it's interesting that the former president is out campaigning and saying that the federal government under Biden is not responding to the people and in North Carolina, and saying they're not helping them. And FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management group, has come out and said, would you please stop doing that? Because what you're doing is people that need help that would call, they're now not calling because you're going around saying that the Biden administration is not responding. And one thing about it is the state has to do that. The governor has to contact them and start the ball rolling. That's something that Governor Kemp did immediately when he got word that the storm was coming. He immediately went out and started that process to declare the state as an emergency. And that's the first step. Right. And then you get the federal funds. And the former president started saying that the Biden administration did not respond to Kemp. Kemp came out and said, no, I talked to the president. The president called me. I missed him and I called him right back, you know. And so, I mean, how do you sit out and just think of stuff like that? I just wonder, that in the midst of all this misfortune and people that are dying and suffering, you sit down and think of something like that. How does that happen?
Well, Michael, lying for some people comes really easily. They don't have to sit down and think about it too hard. It's anything that they feel like they can do to hurt their political opponent.
Well, and also, I think we've learned more through this campaign, that it's about self. It's about me. It's about, I. And I don't really think he can help it. I don't even think it's intentional anymore. I think he's just crazy.
That too. I think it is intentional, but I think he's crazy as well.
and probably has no conscience.
No,
he doesn't have a conscience.
We know
and then
that.
He gets upset with people like Kemp, who are trying to do the best thing for everybody,
for everyone in this state.
Right. He's not. So one of the things I'll call him the former president, as you call him. He said in North Carolina they were picking out. They were only helping the Democrats. So how do they know where the Democrats live as opposed to where the Republicans live? I mean, that's
as my mama used to say, how do you know this man is telling lies? Like when anytime he opens his mouth, he's lying. There's no doubt that's gonna come out. So
he opens his mouth, he's lying.
He's lying.
Yeah. Now, he didn't want to be on 60 Minutes because they were going to fact check.
Fact check. He don't want to be fact checked. He does not want to be fact checked.
He even got checked by Laura Ingraham off of Fox News the other day. She fact checked him on telling a lie about what was
not happy about it though
in North Carolina. Well, turning to something just kind of interesting. Okay. Vanderbilt over the weekend, they beat the Alabama Crimson Tide, and it's so funny. They turned it into a fundraising thing for their NIL. A buddy of mine who played at Vanderbilt called me and we were talking, and they tore down the goalposts after they won. Yeah. And they threw the streets of Nashville and they threw it in the river.
Right.
The fire department went and got the goalposts out. And now what Vanderbilt
they threw the total goalpost.
Oh yes. They carried the streets to downtown.
They threw it all in the river.
In the river.
Said, what did they do that for?
They're celebrating.
If you take the time to tear it down, why don't throw it in the river? I just don't get it.
Well, when you had one in 50 years.
Right. That's the first time they've ever beaten the number one team. First time they've ever beat a number one team, Michael. So they didn't know what to do. They were like, we got to take it somewhere. Let's just throw it in the river.
That's like the dog chasing the car. And then when the car stopped, the dog said, well, what do I do now?
We got it. We can't take it home.
I was impressed with them, especially on offense, because normally they can't, they play good for 2.5 quarters and then they just kind of run out of steam.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
man, that offense they had was great. And just whoever was calling the plays they were trying to win the game. They wasn't just trying to be,
right.
competitive.
They were playing to win instead of not to lose.
Right.
You know, what Vanderbilt is doing is they're sawing the goalposts into 2-foot pieces and they're auctioning them off, I think, for $2,000 a piece. I heard it's sold out. And they're going to take that money and donate it for NIL. And then the helmets that the players wore during the game, they're auctioning those off too at a big price. So they're taking everything that they can get from that momentous occasion, and they're trying to make money for their NIL. So they're raising money off of that win.
Wow.
I think last week, Barbara, you mentioned that older players such as myself should get some NIL money or whatever.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
I still got my helmet in a little
Sell
case.
Sell it, Tom.
Maybe I can get some money for it.
You probably can. You might want to sell that.
Well, Tom, I hate to be the one to break it to you, but I found out this weekend I ended up seeing my daughter, Michaela, and we were talking about NIL, and she said they are going to go back, but they're going to only go back as far as 2016.
How did they make that decision, Michael?
I don't know. And she was upset because she got cut off because she graduated in 2013. So she missed the past 3 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
So,
I do think, I just don't think, I don't think they could afford to go back as far as my era. I mean, I could see your daughter having a pretty legitimate complaint there, but I don't know how would they even do it? What would be fair about it, and so on and so forth. Plus, what would you have to? What would the criteria be? Did you have to let her? Or did you?
If nothing more, Tom, I think that former players, no matter how far they go back, they should at least get free tickets to every game they want to go to, at the minimum. Free merchandise from the schools or something. They should give them a new jersey, something to let them feel like they had something that they could have gained from playing and giving of their lives, basically. So maybe not in the form of a check, but they can give them something.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah,
it's interesting. So either one of you got anything else?
Well, Tom, we were talking about Alabama. They weren't the only top 10 team to get beat. For the first time since 2016, this past weekend, 5 of the top 11 teams, I think, lost this past weekend. So it was an odd kind of a weekend for a lot of different teams that were in the top 10.
Michael, you had something else?
Yeah, the only thing is, this case with P. Diddy is looking a lot more like that other case we had. There are 120 new accusers now, and 25 are children, the youngest being 9 years old.
P. Diddy?
Yes.
Wow.
And they're saying, this is the strange thing, that the majority of the victims were male.
Yeah.
And that
I don't doubt that now. I don't doubt that.
And they had been drugged, and horse tranquilizer was found in their system. And he had these so-called white parties, everybody dressed in white and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And they took place in New York, California, Georgia, and Florida. And his attorney is saying there is a list of who's who, which were enablers that attended these parties. And he's going to start to release their names. You will be surprised at the names that you hear that are going to be connected with this thing. So.
Well, good. I was out there for quite a few years, and a good friend of mine, when it first happened, he wasn't surprised, and he wasn't surprised that it involved men, because of some of the things he had experienced.
Wow.
He told me when I first got out there, he said, he mentioned that there was, and they were all guys. He mentioned there were guys, and they wanted him to come to this party, and he didn't go. And I said, well, if you didn't go, don't even, you know, I ain't going.
Right.
So I don't even want to know where it is. You
Right.
know?
Well, you know, Cat Williams said it in his Club Shay Shay interview that all of this stuff is going to come out in 2024. So they're calling him a prophet now, but I think he just knew some things that.
I do know one night we were down on Sunset and down on Hollywood Boulevard in Hollywood, and this guy came up to us. I don't know where we knew him from, but he told us he was going up to this guy who's a big star. And I ain't going to call his name because it wouldn't do any good, but wanted to know if we wanted to go up to his apartment. And no, man, I'm from Alabama. I'm going home.
Right.
That's what I always said. I'm from Alabama. That kind of got me out of a lot of stuff, you know.
Right.
Anyway, anything else from you guys?
No, that's
So,
it for
No.
Michael, I got to ask you one thing about Auburn's football team. And is Thorne still going to be the starting quarterback?
until the end of the year. Freeze is going to stick with him. You know, he's showing what he's counting on is the recruiting. Over the weekend, they picked up a commitment from Deuce Knight, this highly sought after quarterback from Mississippi that had been committed to Notre Dame for quite some time. And it pushed his 25 recruiting class to number 3 in the nation. And then number 26 class is pretty high. They're teetering between 1 and 3. So the fact that he got Deuce Knight, who is one of these players that may be a generational type player, and the recruiting that's going so well. And there are 2 freshmen that's playing on Auburn's defense that got mentioned, I think, as all freshmen or something on the national poll. So it's a lot of young talent on the team. So I think he's going to rely on the young talent that is promising in all these top recruiting classes coming in as a way to hold the ship together until he can figure out what he's going to do at quarterback. But people are saying, look, you own this.
Right.
You decided on these quarterbacks. Okay.
Right.
You had the opportunity to go in the portal to get one. You talked about you just couldn't spend $1 million to go get a quarterback. This is on you. And as Tom said earlier, you know, you look at that game, you can tell that the weak link is quarterback. And that was one of the recruits said that, a top-rated recruit. They asked him what was going on, and he said, well, anybody knows what's going on. Anybody that knows anything about football can look and tell what's going on, and we'll get that fixed. So it had been rumored for a long time that this guy Deuce was going to commit, and supposedly he had committed a long time ago, and they just now announced it. So,
you know, Michael, I got a new theory now. Maybe that's why he kept playing him, because he figured if he played Thorne, we'd lose. Do commit because he doesn't have a future quarterback on the team. So maybe that's some logic there. I don't know. I'm trying to find a reason he's playing Thorne still, because it still doesn't make any sense to me.
well,
Go with a young player on the team. Give him some experience, even if he's going to be a backup quarterback in the future. Give him some experience at starting and getting some game experience, rather than keep playing Thorne, who's a 5th-year senior, not coming back.
And it's already plateaued. And he's already plateaued.
He's
not going to get any
go.
better.
Right.
No, he's not going to get any better. And he can't run. That's the thing. I mean, they say he can run, but unless my eyes are lying to me, I think even when he tried to hand that ball off on the fourth down play, I think, whatever it was,
right.
And then he's caught out there in no man's land, and he can't get away from anybody.
No.
You know?
Well, now, I remember last year we had Red Zone Robbie, and they were bringing Robbie in, and he was scoring from the red zone, but then all of a sudden they stopped playing Red Zone Robbie and said that Thorne could run the ball too. They tried to make Thorne a runner without natural ability. So I don't understand I don't understand what you're saying, Tom. Thorne's a dual threat quarterback. He can throw on the run, he can run it, and he can drop back and throw it. He can do it all.
I think
Against Alabama A&M, maybe.
A creative offense. We could have used red zone Robin.
Yes, we could have.
Well, the word was he's not an accurate passer. But hell, I never saw him let him throw a pass.
Right.
You know, you can't be accurate when you never throw one. Go ahead.
Well, you know, if you, like you said, if you only throw one or two passes, and if you don't complete it, then you pull. You know, he would do that. Okay. Thorne can throw 5 interceptions and still play the whole game.
Yeah. You know, and I kind of feel bad for Thorne because he's put in a bad situation.
Yes.
He's not the guy.
Right.
Period.
Right.
And, and then when they go to the sideline and you can see him sitting there or whatever, and nobody comes over and pats him on the back.
Nobody's talking to him.
You know?
And when the coach,
Tom, I gotta say this though. Maybe he's trying to emulate Nick Marshall. You know, when Nick Marshall come out the game, he sit down and wouldn't nobody say that to him. So maybe that's what he's trying to do.
You know, we've always the last pure great quarterback we had was Pat Sullivan. God dog it, that was 50 years ago. Now Cam was a great quarterback, but Cam was a great athlete.
Yes.
And his skills translated to the pro game. Nick Marshall was a great athlete. Right. But after that, it's just been, you know, I see the guy from Birmingham, what's his name? Nix. That coach fussed at Nix, and Nix fussed back at him.
Right.
Get out my face, man. Yeah.
Nick said, I've been through Auburn. I know how to handle this stuff.
Anyway, let's get going. We got to get going here. So, hey, Sean's got a minute for us. Sean, come on in here. How you doing?
Good morning to everyone joining in with us. My name is Shantia Jones, and this is Got a Minute. It's still hurricane season in the South, and the storms are brewing. Hurricanes are dangerous and can cause major damage from storm surges, wind damage, rip currents, and flooding. They can happen along any U.S. coast or in any territory in the Atlantic or Pacific Oceans. Storm surge has historically been the leading cause of hurricane-related deaths in the United States. No matter where you are located, please stay informed by paying attention to emergency alarms and information. If you live in a mandatory evacuation zone and local officials tell you to evacuate, do so immediately. When dealing with the weather, determine how best to protect yourself from high winds and flooding. Take refuge in a designated storm shelter or an interior room from high winds. Go to the highest level of the building if you are trapped by flooding, but do not climb into the closed attic. You may be trapped in there by flooding water. Do not walk, swim, or drive through flood waters. Turn around, don't drown. Just 6 inches of fast-moving water can knock you down, and 1 foot of moving water can sweep your vehicle away. Everyone, please be safe. Thank you all for joining in. My name is Shantia Jones, and this has Got a Minute.
Thank you, Sean. That's good advice, and I hope people will heed it. And I can tell you from experience, man, once that water gets up, that water gets vicious. And you have to stay out of its path. So anyway, let's go to our G list. Hollywood has the A list, and here on Tuesdays with Tom, we have the G list. And our G list guest today is Sadie Lea. Sadie Lea is a librarian, particularly a children's librarian. And she is going to talk to us this morning about stories, songs, dancing, rhymes, and a children's librarian. So good morning, Sadie Lea. How are you?
Good morning. I'm well. How are y'all?
Oh, we're doing fine. Thank you so much for being with us. We're going to let Barbara and Michael start off here, and they got a couple questions for you.
Yes, sir.
Unless you want to start out and just give us a little bit of background on you and what you do.
Sure, I can do that. I am a children's librarian. My official title is a youth services librarian, but I find that to be a little much. I say children's librarian. I work with ages of born to 12.
Wow.
And I do stories, programming. I do the collection development of books and other materials in the library for that age group. Outreach, so to preschools, elementary schools, things like that, going out and trying to get the kids in the library as well. I can give you guys kind of my story of how I became a librarian.
Okay.
I really, really loved the library as a kid. I mean, who didn't? As long as you had access, you loved it, right? And I was in there, I mean, all the time, checkout limit every week. I was lucky enough to live 5 minutes away, so I could go right back and get, another 10 books every 3 days as it was. And I really loved it. And I remember as a kid being like, I want to do that. And then I forgot that that was a thing that I could do. I think we do that sometimes. We forget that the dreams you have as a kid can come back, And I drifted from libraries, I guess, in school because I could go to the school library if I needed to. I didn't need to go to the public library. I could get my books there. And, you're a teenager, you start making money. I can go to the bookstore. I don't need to go to the library. How cool is that? And then I made it to university. My undergrad experience was very much floating. I was a English major in the way that I think most English majors are, which is I like to read, I like to research, but I don't know what to do. And I know that this degree is almost a standard degree for a lot of the fields that I am interested in, publishing, writing, things like that. So if I start there, maybe I'll find something by the time I graduate that I'm interested in. And I did. I ended up in I can't remember. I took a lot of children's literature classes. I liked a lot of them. But there was one that I was taking, and I had decided that I wanted to do a comparative essay for an assignment on the book Lafcadio. I have it with me. It is a Shel Silverstein book. He is a poet. You may have read him before, children's poet. Even if you have not read him, you might have heard him. He wrote A Boy Named Sue. And he's an essential children's poet, I suppose. And weird thing, but he was a regular contributor to Playboy magazine. Lafcadio was published in Playboy magazine first. Oh. And this is going to sound absurd, right? It sounds absurd, but in November 1963 was when this was published, and Playboy magazine in the 60s had a lot more written material, I guess you'd say. Stories, articles, things like that, that weren't necessarily anything that you might want to keep out of a library, right? And I mean, as you can see it wasn't kept out of the library. I had to go see if I could find the original Lafcadio in Playboy magazine so I could do my comparative essay. I could have backed up. I could have said, I'm not doing this. I'm not going up to the librarian and saying, hey, y'all got Playboy magazine in here? And, but I buckled down. I walked up to the desk. I said, this is about to be a weird question. They said, probably not, but you can. I said, you guys have back issues of Playboy magazine, specifically November 1963? And a couple of them were thinking. It wasn't judgmental, but it was just thinking. And then one of the ladies that was standing near the back, she said, I think we do. I think we have them on microfilm. And I said, okay, that works. That's perfect. I don't need a physical copy of it. And so she said, let me double check. We'll go look. And she took me back to the microfilm section. If you haven't looked at a microfilm before, it is similar to what would be inside a film camera. Load it into our machine. I say we have a microfilm device. You load it into the machine and it'll read the images onto a screen. So we went back there. It was those shelves that are on a mechanical track, and you have to press the button so that it opens up. And you could see just, thousands of little boxes full of microfilm. And we walk over to the Playboy section and we find 1963. And she says, all right, here you are. Let's go to the microfilm reader. We'll load it in the machine and we'll look. I feel like I've walked into another world, right? I'm like, there's no way this is possible. There's no way this is something I can do. This was after I'd, tried to digitally go back a bunch of different ways online, see if I could find a back copy. I was like, what am I going to do? Gosh. And I went to the chat for our library at the university. I said, hey, do y'all have digital collections? They're like, we do. I said, okay. Put it in, scrolled to the page, and then I copied the entire issue, sent it to myself on email, and did a comparative essay. There were changes. I was able to talk about what else was in the magazine it was originally published in, changes in illustration, changes in what was written. And it was a very, very fulfilling, I guess, experience. And I was like, whoa, that was awesome. And at the time I hadn't even thought, and I want to do that. I was just so struck by how incredible it was to me. And then as I was sitting, it kind of hit me about a month later. I was like, I'm going to be graduating in a couple months. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I was like, wait, I could do that. I always wanted to do that. Why don't I try? And so I did. When I graduated from my undergrad degree, actually was during the pandemic, so I had moved back home. And I got a job at a local library, began as a library assistant. And when the previous children's librarian left, I was hired into the position with the understanding that I would complete my master's degree. And I did complete my master's in library and information science last August. So I have been a children's librarian now for almost 2 years, and had my master's for a little less than a year and a half, I guess.
Okay, well, good deal.
That's me.
Congratulations.
So, Barbara, you got a question?
I do. Good morning, Sadie.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us today. You talked about you're the children's librarian and you service ages from birth to 12 years old. What are some of the activities you have to get kids into the library, and what's the response like? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I do a couple different story times. I do one that I call baby time. That is for my ages 0 to 2. And I do a story time for ages 3 to 5. That's my preschool story time. And I say in between, come to both and see which one you like. And it's been really incredible, the response. When I started, there was only one story time at the library. By no fault of the library, we have a very small staff, 10 people, one children's librarian, and not a lot of space either. The library's already had a extra wing put on it because when the library was built, the population was much smaller. Okay. we're trying to expand again because it continues to grow. But we had one story time a week, which is good. Had great attendance, but I convinced our director I wanted to try a baby story time and a preschool one so that I could focus in more on the specific development and socialization of those two age groups. I would break it down further if I could, but we have only one room that's big enough for a storytime class, and it is also the only room big enough for all the other programs. So I do a story time. The way I do them is about 20 minutes of stories, songs, dancing, rhymes, things like that. And then for the rest of an hour, I do playtime with all the kids. So we get out toys, coloring, things like that, and kind of use it as a socialization time, a way to learn about communicating. A lot of the people that come in, especially in that baby time class, it is the first time they've gone out with their baby. And it was as well when I started in the position, the first time they went out with their toddler because it was right after the pandemic. So there were, 1 or 2 year olds that weren't very socialized coming into the class. And my first story time, I had 2 kids show. I had 2 little girls and their moms show. And my top attended, I had 60 people at within about a year and a half. My regular number usually sits around the late 30s of people there, parent and child. So about 20 kids usually are there.
Right.
Can't go in the original storytime room anymore. That only fits about 10, 15 people. But I try to get a book in for the babies and a longer one or 2 shorter ones in for the preschoolers. I am a lot more open with my storytime style. Not everyone is like that. Some people have a more rigid style. I have a very go with the flow style. If the kids aren't liking the book, if they're not having a good day to concentrate, then I'm going to start skipping pages, I'm going to start moving through it. I don't want the book to become a chore. The book should be part of the joy of the playtime and the songs and things like that. If it's not working, it's not working.
Right.
I'm not gonna press it. But I also try to. A lot of the parents, I have to tell them not to be embarrassed by the way that their kid is acting. There's a lot of, it's okay. That's a baby. It's okay.
Right.
It's all right. If you got to step out, then step out. Come back in if you can. I won't be hurt by it. Running around, things like that, babbling.
Yes.
I'm like, of course they're babbling. They're not even
babies.
a year old.
Yeah,
Okay.
babies.
The baby class talks through the story. That's okay. I want them to hear it.
Yes.
I want them to hear it. I want them to see it. I want them to know that the book is a good thing and to associate it at that level. They're not literate. They're associating books with play, with enjoyment, with learning, with friendship, and with safe adults, right?
Right.
And I really think that at that lowest level, that's what's most important. Now, the preschoolers, I'll be like, y'all, try to sit down, please. Come on. When I have the older kids. But I'm still, very lenient. They're very little. So I do story times. I try to do events for elementary age kids as well. I will be doing a Halloween costume party next Tuesday night. It's going to be a lot of fun. We do a lot of crafts. I'll be doing open art nights at my library in November and December so that we can do a kids art show in January.
Nice.
We do things like pajama story time, Lego night, movies, a lot of movies, things like that. Kind of just getting the kids in there. A lot of it is about socialization as much as it is about the media. So
Let me see if Michael, you got a question?
Yes. Sadie, thanks for being with us today. I want to ask you about all the issues. I guess it would be from a political standpoint where they are banning books in the library.
yes,
And I found it especially disheartening, especially when it's certain children books. And I can understand that some may have adult content in it, that may be inappropriate, but at the same time, it would be the best place for kids to learn about reproductive
yes,
rights or reproductive systems and how they got there. It's better that they learn in a book than out in the streets, so to speak. And then there's some that they want to ban books about the history of our country, especially when it comes to people of color. As a librarian, someone that major in library and information sciences, give me your perspective on the banning of books.
it's dangerous and it's hard. Very dangerous. And it's quickening at a very scary pace. There are different types of, we kind of go with banned books as the general name, but there are a couple different levels as to what might be happening and the places they might be happening. We have the banning of a book, right? So that is the complete removal. You can't see it. It's not there. It was there and it's been taken away, right? Or there's been placed a ban on bringing it in. There is the censorship of a book. So that doesn't necessarily mean that it's been banned. Maybe it has been moved to a different section. It's for this age, but because of certain topics, it has been moved to a higher age group, even though it doesn't need to be when it comes to the level of the book, the content, things like that. And then there is a book challenge. So it can be official or unofficial. Most libraries do have an official channel for challenging the inclusion of a book. And it is good that we have these channels because sometimes there's a book that's been in there for 30 years, has incredible misinformation in the nonfiction section about a medical procedure, a document, something that's actually misinformation. And sometimes we won't know because it's there before we get there. It's good that we have the channels, but people aren't using them. Instead of the challenge or the asking librarians to look at them, people are going above the librarians or to the side, or to social media, to say, look at what these librarians are doing. Look at these horrible things that are happening. We gotta get this out of here. Look at this stuff. And if there is a formal challenge, then there is a process. Libraries have public libraries, school libraries, and so on, that a librarian will look at the book. And there are levels to the process as well of, I wouldn't quite call it an appeal, but it basically is an appeal that it will go up a level, right? But people aren't using the processes because they are not trusting the librarians. And it's happening more and more often. It was happening more in schools, I'd say, about 2 years ago. Media centers is sometimes the name for a school library, but it has become a more prominent issue in public libraries as well. I don't know if you had to ask my opinion about banning books. Obviously, I am about access to knowledge, open access. I am all about if if a kid is coming in to check out a book at the age group that they can't make decisions for themselves, the parent's going to be with them. So the inclusion of a book in the baby board book section, the baby's not going to pick that book without you. And it's important that kids are able to access this information as well. I did not receive sex education from school. I received it from a book. I received it from The Care and Keeping of You. It was an American Girl book. And, you know, it was, I can't say it was perfect, but it was more than what I got from school. And barring this access to information it's dangerous, not just because of the taking it away, but the making it seem like it's not there at all. Making it invisible.
Right.
Can I make a generalization and say that the majority of it is political?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely you can. Most of the time people haven't read the book when they challenge it. That's something that I feel like I should have started with that. Most people haven't read the book that they're challenging. A lot of challenge forms do ask for things like, if you can give us an example, a page number, this, that, a box to check off that you've read the book. And that'll stop a lot of people because they didn't read it. They didn't even skim it. They saw that it was, you know, the book, Something Happened in Our Town, picture book about racism in a small town. And they're like, this is about racism. Ban it. Yeah. Whoa. There was a book that we had somebody, didn't get banned, still in the library, that somebody saw, and there was it didn't say it was a boy. It was just a child with short hair wearing a tutu. They said, we can't have this. We said, yes, we can. Yes, we can. But it is. There's a level of it is like a power grab, I guess, over the library, which is very interesting to me because it is a public building. You don't have to read the book. Right. It's not assigned to you. Right. If you're worried about misinformation, absolutely. But you don't have to read a book you don't want to read. Yeah, it's a power grab a lot of the time.
Well, when you said that a lot of the information about books were on social media, that right there let me know everything I needed to know about the people holding court on get rid of this book and that book, you know.
But nobody's forcing them to read the book. They don't have to. So why do they want to remove it, give someone else an opportunity to read it if they want to? It should be all about choice. And that's that's what they're doing. You said it's a power grab. I agree. They want to remove the choice that people have, and that's not any of their business.
But and also, especially when you talk about books that revisit our history, the parts that we're not so enthused about, it's all about controlling the information.
Yes.
As well, because people nowadays, and I use my own kids for example, born in early 90s, they didn't maybe have to engage in the type of bias that someone of my generation did. And unless I tell them, they don't know about it. And so they can't read it in the library or in books at school. So then that way that part misses them and they don't have an understanding. But I adhere to the saying that if you fail to acknowledge your history, history will repeat itself.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. A library, that's open access to knowledge, intellectual freedom are some of the like tenets, right, of librarianship. And that means the good and the bad, right? This isn't, you're not going into the library just because I only want to read the good things, right? I only want to read the fairy tales. We got to learn something, right? We got to get in there and learn. And to keep that information updated and to keep it accessible and visible is essential to that, you know? And to continue to grow that as well. We can't say, oh, well, we got a book about it, we're good. No, get the updated material. When people write something, when there's a, you know, a new study that has influenced another book, when somebody who's important in a field has, you know, released new information to us, we want to further release that information to the public, right? Yeah, it's very tough. It's very tough, and it puts a lot of people whose values are very much based in open access of information up against a real enemy, you know, like an actual something to fight against. Yeah.
Barbara?
Yes. Sorry, Tom, I've been out for a second. So you talked about the banning of books and so forth. Is there an organization that's fighting against that? I mean, how do we talk about that?
Yeah, so they tend to right. They tend to be a little more not on a national level. They tend to be on a state level. So your state will likely have a specific organization that is going to be fighting against censorship, book banning, other types of like putting information behind bars, right? Okay. Especially for libraries. A lot of the times they are affiliated with other library organizations. But beyond that, even more important is really just like, even if you can get 3 or 4 people together and go to City Hall when they're talking about a book, right, and kick up a fuss, that'll do more than most of it. A local level will do more than anything. These libraries, public libraries, right, do function on, there's a little bit of a federal level, right? There's a little bit of a state level. Yes. But the county and city level is where most of the decision making and the funding happens for libraries. So absolutely, a state organization is going to be the best way to get organized. It's going to be the best way to get new information, updates. Most of them do keep lists of challenges, like formal challenges, and especially ones that have made news that have gotten really public. And they do that for public as well as school libraries. And then there are separate organizations that are ones that are about fighting against the censorship, and then ones that are more distinctly focused on opening access. So making it possible to read these censored items. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Back to Barbara's question, you know, growing up, I remember churches were never locked. You could walk in the church on 6th Avenue anytime and go in and light a candle and pray. Libraries were open access. You could go. I belonged to the Titusville Library, and that when my mom took me to that library, man, she opened up a whole nother world for me. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing how these were open access areas of our community that now have come under some kind of siege, so to speak, in terms of especially our governor in Florida, in terms of they want to control how you think, really.
Yes.
And I don't know if I don't think that's a good thing.
I do think that libraries do come under this fire because there is, I don't want to say libraries are one of the last places, but no, I think that's fair. One of the last places that you can go for free. You don't have to pay to be in there. You don't have to pay to use the materials in there. You can go to the programs. You can go to the movies. The only time that you have to pay is if you don't live in the county and you want a card. And then it's usually, most libraries, it's a small fee to be able to access that library's catalog. It's called you guys have probably heard the term like third place, which is, you know, the first place is your home, the second place is work, and a third place is a place where people can gather because of a similarity of interest, of ideas, things like that. It is one of the library is one of the few third places that is completely free. If you just need to use the bathroom, you can just come in and use the bathroom, right? You don't have to buy a drink at the counter. We don't even, our library and most libraries don't even do late fees anymore.
Wow.
Late fees have become pretty much a thing of the past. We find that people bring the books back if they're not afraid that we're mad at them. We're not mad. We just want the book back. No big deal.
Right.
If you've lost it, tell us so that we can get a new one. Again, a lot of the time that happens with the kids' books. I'm able to look at it and say, oh, I don't need a new copy of this. Waive it. Y'all come back in. Get in here. Don't be scared. Yeah, we want to keep it as open of a place as possible, you know?
That's great.
That is great.
We got any final things from either one of you, Michael or Barbara? I want to say, Sadie Lea, you know, Joyce, my wife, does the Cat in the Hat. And
yes.
I go and take photos and watch it sometimes. And those kids are so excited, man. And she dresses up like the Cat in the Hat, the hat on and all that. And those kids just have a great time. It's nice to watch. And I go back to, my mom took me to the library. I was 9 years old, and I just fell in love with it. And I've been fond of libraries ever since. And like I said, being a football player, the library was where I could escape. Be a football player.
Tom, you're one of the few. I had someone when I was working at Auburn for a while there part-time, and I was a former football player was trying to come to the Alumni Association, and I was, I said, you don't know where it is. It's like, no, I said, it was right across from the library. He's like, I don't know what it is. So wait a minute. You graduated from Auburn. What do you mean you don't know where the library is? So, you may be one of the few who knew where it was.
Well,
correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Auburn's library like one of the top 5 or 3 in the country as far as better libraries or something like that?
Yes.
Auburn's an incredible library.
Yes.
Okay.
That's great.
I'm like steaming a little. I'm like, if I could go to Auburn Library, you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Sadie Lea. It's been great.
Yeah.
We wish you well, and I've got a new book coming out next year, so we'll be probably wanting to come visit your library.
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. Well, that was great. As you can tell, I'm a big library guy. My closing comment for today is it's National Book Month. I'm proud to be a book reader, and I'm proud to be a book writer, having written and published 4 books with another on the way scheduled for release in fall of 2025. In elementary and high school, it was the Rover Boys that I loved, a series of books about young boys who had all these adventures. In high school, it was, among other things, the story of Jackie Robinson and his integration of Major League Baseball. In college, I read the autobiography of Malcolm X. I read works by James Baldwin and Langston Hughes. Before I started writing my own books, I've written a memoir, Walk On, My Reluctant Journey to Integration at Auburn University. I've written a short story series called the Slice of Life series, which if you happen, and this week I will be reading from that series of books at working with Troy Public Radio, Troy University. It will be in Opelika at the East Alabama Arts Center. We will have a literary works reading by Don Noble, who was a former professor at the University of Alabama, and myself. And it should be fun. And if you're in the area or if you listen to Troy Public Radio, perhaps you can join us either live or on the broadcast. And that's our show for today. We want to thank the audience. We appreciate you. We want to thank our G-list guest, Sadie Lea. Thank our sponsor, Best Girl Inc. Thanks again to the TWT team, Barbara, Sean, Emily, Michael, and Joyce. And that's it for this October the 8th. Remember, a day without a smile is a day wasted. If you've got an extra one, give it one to someone else today. Enjoy yourself. Make every day count. Stay safe. Peace.